This podcast is brought to you by Rebecca Cassells of the Rising Dawn series. Do you like violence? Do you like smut? Are you tired of the stereotypical novels of werewolf romance out there and want something a little bit different? Then pick up Sparked Revolution, Book 1 in the Rising Dawn series by Rebecca Cassells. Available on Amazon, in Kindle, and paperback. You too can become a sponsor of Stories, the True and the Fictional by heading on over to buymeacoffee.com/STTATF or follow the link in the show notes. Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Stories, the True and the Fictional. Today we have D.H Hoskins on. How are you?
I'm doing really great. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Yes, and I will say that when I posted a little maps video from Annie Cormack, D.H Hoskins was he was quick to comment. So I thought, you know what, let's talk some fantasy maps from people that enjoy them and stuff like that. But before we dive into that, my favorite question to ask everyone that comes on is, who is D.H Hoskins?
Yeah, that is a very deep philosophical question. I like to think of myself as an author, fantasy author currently. I will probably dabble in other things as well. I live in the New England area, just outside of Boston. So I've been writing for quite a long time, but I've only recently had my debut. It's kind of just something that's been a hobby that I've just like slowly just getting more and more momentum behind it of like doing it more and more consistently. Like the more you do it, the more you want to do it and just keep getting into that habit of it. So I've recently got to the point where I'm like writing pretty seriously, and I felt comfortable with something enough to put it out there. So that's where my debut is. So yeah, I'm a fantasy author. I have two French bulldogs, Millie and Rufus. We like to go on walks and hikes and everything like that. I have a wife, and we live just outside of Boston. So yeah, that would sum me up pretty much, I think.
I love that you mentioned your dogs before your wife. You know, it's
yeah, she would be fine with that. She'll mention them first too.
Yeah. So. That's good. That's
Those
great.
are probably the key components. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, as all our listeners know, we like to do icebreaker questions just to get to know the guest, not just their work, but we'd like to get to know them personally. And we think these questions kind of it's a good way to get to know people. So if you're ready, the first one is if you could get rid of one thing in the world, what would it be?
All right. So first of all, how much of this is if this feels heavy for an icebreaker, to be honest with you? Because I was like scratching my head over it. I'm like, I could say like the most like trivial personal thing to me, like mosquitoes or like commercials. But like really, I mean, and this will probably sound like a Miss America answer or something like that. But like if you are being able to get rid of something, it's like hunger or poverty or something like that. Like, you know, that's really what jumps out to me. Like when you first hear that, you're like, yeah, like inequality. Like I feel like those are things that are really causing a lot of issues, and I can deal with the mosquitoes in the meantime. So that would probably be it. Like one of those big broad categories that I think would just
mosquitoes or hunger, you know.
Yeah. And hunger does affect me. When I do get hungry, it's not great. So I probably would go with hunger. I think that would make the world, you know, help everybody out.
Yeah. Well, most people go for the Miss Universe political answer, but then like we do really encourage selfishness, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's what I was wondering. I was like, do I go for the very personal that shows the personality or the Miss Universe one? So I showed you a little bit of both, I figured.
Yeah.
You
No.
know?
Fair answer.
Commercials during football games are tough.
Yeah. Well, what about the Super Bowl? Because I know they make a big thing about the Super Bowl, and it's like you get all the new Marvel movies and the trailers for movies, and it's like I'm okay with trailers, you know.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one exception. The rest of the season, you are just, and they're constant because like really during a football game, it's like actually only 12 minutes of actual playing. And it's a lot of what's crazy. It's like mainly like auto insurance commercials. I know you're in Australia, so you probably don't experience this. Like there's like 5 companies and they have like 80% of the commercials, and they're constant.
And they'd be printed on the grass as well, wouldn't they? On the field.
They will. They're coming for it, and on the uniforms, I'm sure it's coming very.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. No, the best we have every time we go to our local cinema, there's a lawyer ad, and
Oh, okay.
it plays twice. I don't want to plug him too much, but he's called Michael Vasily. And he looks
So,
like some guy you just shouldn't trust. Like
like Saul Goodman,
he's
like kind of.
he's got the little lip beard,
Oh yeah,
under there,
goatee.
and he
Yeah.
literally looks like a pimp. You know, and it's
Is it
just like it's
injury
he's
lawyer kind of thing?
no, I think they do everything, but I should know because I see anytime I go to the movies, I see his trailer, you know,
Mhm.
twice, like
Yeah.
twice. He gets two ads before the, you know,
Like
you know,
one after the other?
so they play one start, then they play a whole
Yeah.
lot of other ads, and they play him again, you know,
Yeah,
and
you
it's
can't get
just
can't get away from
you
it.
can't, but he's stuck in your head, but he doesn't look like someone you can trust, so um,
No.
he
I
won't
mean
be
that's
listening, so he won't sue me, so it's all right.
okay. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. All right. What's something on your bucket list?
On my bucket list. So like outside, I'll get outside of like goals for the book and stuff like that. Because obviously like everyone probably has those lofty goals of
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
getting pretty big with your book. But from like a travel perspective, one thing I would like to do is go very far north at the solstice and like
Mm.
see like when the sun is out full day. I just
Yeah.
think that would be really neat. You can go like Norway or Alaska, somewhere up there, and
Yeah.
just like kind of hang out and just see that effect all day.
Yeah.
Which is always very cool. Like the furthest I've been is like Scotland, and it's like
Yeah.
we're there during the solstice, and I think it's out at like 10:30, and it was just like I understand what's happening, but I'm still
Yeah.
like blown away by it.
Yeah.
You're like
Yeah.
you're looking at your watch and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
it's so
It it
cool.
it would be so trippy just to, because I think, I got a friend in Alaska and he says like the sun's out for ages. Like it's just,
Yeah. Yeah,
it's
living
just
there would be interesting, but I think like
yeah.
a week there would be like really cool. You just want to
Yeah.
sleep.
And it's like even with like where I live in Australia, I'm on the East Coast and the sun
Okay.
rises on the East Coast, but you can fly all the way to Perth, which is the Western Australia, and you can see
Yeah.
the sun like goes the other way, like it sets on the water,
Yeah.
and it just does your
Mhm.
head in. And
Yeah.
there's a different time zone over there. It's pretty funny.
Oh,
Um,
sure. Yeah.
but the other thing is that's really weird is you can fly from Sydney to New Zealand, and it's a quicker flight than Sydney to the Perth in Western Australia.
Yeah.
Like
That's
it's
wild.
just I can go to another
You
country
underestimate how
quicker.
big it is, right?
Yeah, it's massive.
Yeah.
It's massive. I've only seen a little bit of it, but
Mm.
all right. Now Ryan's not here, but he judges this one really harshly. But
That's
he
scary.
also gives you
Okay.
two options. He gives you two options. One,
Yeah.
he says, "Okay, what is the greatest sitcom ever made? And if it's not your favorite, what is your favorite?" So you can
Okay.
essentially have two choices. Yeah,
That makes sense. Because when I listened to the one with Amy, it was like, it was, so what's your favorite, I think? And then
yeah,
you sent me the questions, and I was like,
yeah.
those are two different answers, I think.
Mhm.
Even though, so greatest, I think you have to go with Seinfeld. Again, I feel like that's like almost going back to the Miss
Yeah,
Universe thing, like
yeah,
the safe answer.
yeah.
And it feels like kind of cliche. I definitely watched a ton of it. Like I was too young to watch it real time when it was
Hmm.
out, but like
Yeah,
all in the syndication coming out home like during middle school and high school, like we were watching that like crazy.
yeah,
Um, and now I haven't rewatched it in some time. But I still think that's like clearly just the blueprint for it.
yeah,
For like you actually have people that are awful, and then
yeah,
some shows to run with that to very good effect. And then my favorite, so the way I would answer that is the one I rewatch most frequently is Parks and Rec, probably.
yes,
Um,
yes.
that gets the most mileage for
Yeah.
rewatching. That one I think I'd have to say. So,
It gave us Chris Pratt, so
did for
he
good or for
was
ill? I don't know.
yeah, he was so good in that. And yeah, I love Ron Swanson. There's just something
Mhm.
about Ron
Yeah,
Swanson. I just
yeah, it's very related.
yeah,
So,
the whole premise of some guy who's anti-government working for the government is just like
well, my
it's
friend
brilliant.
brings that up all the time because he's like, all the libertarians I've met work for the government. So
So it's real
I don't
life.
know what to do with that. Yeah, it is. It's very close to real life over here.
Maybe
So,
they want to destroy it from within. I don't know.
yeah, yeah.
All right. Speaking of destruction, what's your zombie apocalypse plan?
Um, so I think I th what I've thought about is just a boat and an island. I don't have the island for the boat in mind, but that
Hmm.
would definitely I think that would be the way to go. That would be the game plan. If I'm being super honest, I think I would be the zombie. I don't
Yeah.
think I'm
Yeah.
I
You just give in. Give in.
if you search deep within yourself, you're like,
Yeah.
I'm probably not making it past like
Yeah.
20
Yeah.
far.
Yeah. I
I'm ill
mean,
prepared.
yeah.
If I make it past those, like, I think if you make it past like the first 48, 72 hours, then you have time to figure out
Yeah.
your stuff. And
Yeah.
that's when I would try to like, there's some islands in like Boston Harbor that you could probably get out to and
Mm.
just like just
Yeah.
camp out here for a while.
Yeah.
So that would be the one. So
Yeah. Because, yeah. I'm lucky because I live far from civilization, pretty much.
okay.
like Sydney is an hour and a half away, you know.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
so everyone asks me, and I go, "Well, I'm kind of in the mountains already," because everyone says
Yeah.
they either go to a hardware store called Bunnings. There's actually a
Yeah.
Facebook page called "If the Zombie Apocalypse Happens, Meet Me at Bunnings."
Yeah.
um,
And yeah, you have the
but
list of things.
if they don't say that, they say, "Oh, go to the mountains." And I'm like, "Well, I'm already here."
There you go. Yeah. Yeah, then if you can hunker down in your own space, then
Yeah,
you know what you're getting yourself into.
yeah,
So it makes
yeah.
complete sense.
I just got to
Um,
prepare for all the visitors that are going to come because if everyone's
yeah,
coming to the mountains, you know.
do you have a guest list, like who you would allow in and like
No,
dibs?
oh, first come, first serve. You know,
Yeah. Okay.
do a bit of trade, do a bit of trade.
Yeah, this like
What do you got?
diplomatic of you,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
The best way to go about it. So yeah.
All right, time for a time travel question.
Yeah.
Now when we
Yeah.
wrote this question, it was before Elon Musk became a controversial figure.
I was gonna ask
but
that.
we kept it because we've
Yeah.
said a million times if anyone was going to do it, it would be him. You know.
Yeah, that's
So
fair. Yeah.
so Elon Musk calls you up and offers you to test drive his new electric time machine. What do you do? Where do you go?
Okay. So this one I thought about the most when you sent it to me. One, I obviously the first thing I thought of was like, how much do I trust in Elon Musk? Time machine. Um, but taking that out of it. So like I would definitely go back in history somewhere.
Mhm.
I'm very fascinated with like many different time periods of history, which makes it really tough. Like I've tried writing historical fiction in the past,
Yeah,
and it's like shiny object. Like I would just kind
yeah,
of like get really immersed in one time period, and
yeah,
then like some other time. It's not like I lose interest. It's just
yeah,
some other time captures my interest. So it's not like I'm like because there's those guys who are like just love the Civil War or just love the rebel. Like they love like they're just like that's their time period. I don't
yeah,
have that. So it is hard to pick like a specific time, but I would be super interested in going back
yeah,
somewhere just to like see slice of life, like what it would be actually like.
yeah.
One thing I thought of, which could make it very interesting, is like to make a game out of it, is someone just sends you back, doesn't tell you what time you're going to,
Oh, and
and
you
you just
gotta
have to
guess.
guess. Yeah. Similar to like, have you seen that game where they do it with Google Maps? Where they'll just like they'll show you like a frame of Google Maps, like
Yeah.
Street View, like you know how you can drop a guy
Yeah,
down
yeah,
there
yeah, yeah. Street
and you
preview,
get
yeah.
like this 360 Street View. They do that as a
Yeah.
game. We'll try to guess what country they're in.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. I gotta
Yeah,
do
so
that.
it would be unfortunate to only have one go at it because like
Yeah,
if you don't get it right, that kind of is tough.
yeah.
But if you had like a time machine for like a few hours, like I would try to do that
Oh.
maybe.
So
And
so
just
so
like
you'd go send me back. Don't tell me where, you know. And, yeah,
yeah,
no.
and as long as I have a way to come back, I'd be happy. Because there's no period of time I'd want to actually live in.
No, no,
They
no,
all seem
no,
terrible.
no. Well, I don't know. Like I you know, 80s, 90s, you know, go back
Yeah,
20
the
years, you know?
80s were not. Yeah, that's it. Like after
Yeah.
the 80s, I think you don't want to go too much further back.
Maybe even the 70s, you know, I would have loved to, you know, go to some music festivals back then, but
Yeah, there's some
you know,
shows.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it would be simpler. You know,
Uh,
you could.
uh,
I think you could adjust to not having the phone again quickly. But
Well, yeah, well, I don't know how old you are, but you know, I grew up without them, so
yeah,
I
I was just
can
on the top
yeah,
of it.
I can quite easily just put my phone down and like because here in Australia, this happened, I think 6 months ago. I think the internet went down or Facebook stopped working or one of those things, and people were calling emergency services.
Oh yeah.
They're going, the internet's not what, and they're going, you're like, why are you
The
calling?
full internet or like just
It was
Facebook?
something to do with phones I can't
Okay.
remember what it was. I think it was, it may have been the internet for like 2 hours or something,
Two
or an
hours,
hour.
yeah.
Like it was hardly anything,
Yeah.
and people were
And
freaking out.
they can't
And
use
I'm
the
going,
internet to talk.
yeah, and I'm going like, why are you calling? Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Just means you know the
that's
word to say. Like,
they're probably all TikTokers, this younger generation just going,
yeah, it is
ah.
wild. It
Like
is wild how you
I
yeah.
probably mentioned it on a recent podcast, but like where I live, the wind blows and the power goes out, It's
Oh,
like
really?
we had the power went out for I think it went out at 6 p.m. a few weeks ago, and then it came back on at like 2 o'clock the next day in the
Wow.
afternoon, you know.
Yeah, so
Um there's
you're
no
just
power. I have
do you
no
have a
power.
generator?
Yeah.
Are you just
Oh, we got a generator. We
okay,
got a
yeah, but
generator
that doesn't
and
help.
yeah. But it's like it can't run the whole house. So it's like here you can use the oven or the TV, and there's this near the window. But
Yeah.
I just ended up I'm gonna go out to the movies. I went out and saw Twisters.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
Oh, and it was wind that knocked it out.
yeah.
So that's
That was
that's
my
kind of
thought because I got there and
yeah.
I was going like Twisters or what was it? A Quiet Place, the new A Quiet Place that they did.
Yeah.
um, which is supposed to be good. But no, I was just like, I don't know. I just had wind in my head for some idea, and
Yeah.
I went and saw it, and I really
And I
like that
also
movie.
think watching the Quiet Place and then going back to a house with no electricity.
Yes.
No, no
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
The wind is a little less intimidating. So
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, lots of trees.
or maybe not intimidating, but like less creepy, I guess.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
At night, maybe not so much. It is a little creepy
Yeah.
because where I
Yeah.
live, there's one street with street lights.
Okay.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
one street.
So how high up in the mountains are you?
I'm not that high up. I'm on the Sydney side of
Okay.
the Blue Mountains.
Okay.
So the other side of the mountains is higher and it gets snow, but we don't get snow. I can't
Do you
remember the
get
exact height
do you
we
get
are.
snow at all? Like
No.
never wow.
Not where I live, but
Okay.
other end of the mountain. So if I drive an hour the other way, then I'll get snow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But I've never seen snow.
You've never done the
I've
hour
never.
drive?
No, well, because the roads close.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Every time it's snowed, I'm going to go check out the snow, and you get halfway there, and they go road closed.
You're like, I'm good.
We're like, I want to see the snow.
Yeah.
No.
No.
I will one day.
Yeah. That could be your bucket list
Yeah.
item.
I did climb Mount Kosciuszko, which is Australia's highest mountain, a few months
Okay.
ago, and
Nice.
has snow on it sometimes.
Okay.
Like in winter, it has snow,
Oh,
but
wow.
it's also the most underwhelming climb you could ever.
Really?
Like it's
That's the
literally
tallest in Australia?
it's the highest mountain we have, but
Okay.
you drive to the parking lot, you get on a chairlift, it takes you all the way up, and then you walk 8 kilometers. I think it's no 6 kilometers on a
Okay.
slight incline on a very nice path that they've made for you. So it's
Yeah.
tourist. It's
Yeah. 6 kilometers is still pretty long.
it is.
No. Yeah.
It is, but it was so easy. It's the easiest climb. Like it's not even a climb. It's a gentle walk.
Yeah. We're like a large country for that to be the highest.
Yeah.
The highest mountain is pretty.
And I got to the top there, and I met a guy from Chicago.
All right.
Yeah.
There you go.
Just like tourists.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. Anyway, I think that's the icebreakers done.
All right. Hopefully I handled those okay.
You passed.
Well,
You passed with
okay.
flying colors.
Won't get yelled at for the sitcoms.
No.
I hope.
No, you won't.
Yeah.
Maybe one day we'll get we'll write a list of all the sitcoms mentioned, and Ryan can do a little video on the best.
I would like to see that. Yeah. Get more perspectives.
This podcast is brought to you by Martin Kearns and the Valor of Valhalla series. In the battle between two ancient evils,
can one naive young man become the last hope against powerful creatures of legend? Beneath the Veil is the gripping first book in the Valor of Valhalla dark urban fantasy series. If you like reluctant heroes, infernal myths, and bloody epic clashes, then you'll love Martin Kearns' formidable foray into the unknown. So head on over to readkearns.com and grab yourself a copy of Beneath the Veil today.
Well, let's get into your writing.
Okay.
You mentioned it was like basically like a hobby that you just started taking more seriously. That sort of
Yeah,
thing.
well, I mean, I mean, I always like had the idea of writing and publishing and putting books out there. And like what I mentioned during like the bucket list question was like those lofty aspirations of, you know, big time publishing and, you know, HBO show at some point or something like that. Like I've always that's always been like, you know, something that I've aspired to even since like middle school, high school. It's just something I've been interested in. So I was writing, you know, pretty seriously. I guess I shouldn't have exactly called it a hobby, but like just like I was writing and like trying to figure it out. And like,
okay.
I felt like just over these years, because that high school was 15 years ago. It's like stops and starts, and like I want to take it seriously.
Yeah.
I take it seriously for a long time. You put it down, things get in the way with jobs and like college and grad school. But it was always there, and it's something I always enjoyed. And then it was like last 5 or 6 years, so it's like really getting more and more serious. And I think that's really just this like cumulative effect of just doing it more and more frequently. That like you see the progress you're making, you see yourself getting better, and that kind of fuels you to keep doing it more. And you get better habits of like, all right, I have an hour tonight. I can crank out something. I know exactly what to do. Whereas like when I was 20, if I had an hour, it's like open up the computer, look at a screen. So all of those things kind of coalesced. But yeah, so I've just gotten stronger at it, I think, to the point where this latest work that I have, I just felt confident enough, especially with different beta reader feedbacks, and like I had a developmental editor. With their feedback, I felt good enough to put it out there and publish it. So let's see how it goes, basically.
Awesome. We will get into that, but I really wanted to touch on maps.
Yeah.
You know, let's do the maps. You're 4 maps in the front of books.
I am. Yes. So it's really funny. I would have thought before I was like on Instagram, seriously, and before I saw a video last week, that like it was either people were like really into the maps or just like super indifferent. Like they just don't think about them or whatever. Because I've always been, you know, anytime there's a map in a book, I'm always like really interested in it. I can like kind of study it and like look at it. And like I like exploring the world through the map a lot. And like even when I'm looking, like when I'm selecting a new book, like if I'm not at a bookstore, I'll just go on Amazon and just do the read sample and like look at the map. To be like, this is something I'd be interested in. So it's like not judging a book by its cover, but judging a book by its map, essentially. Like, well, this I can get into this. This looks like there's a lot going on. So I figured there's people that liked maps or just didn't care. And then and I still don't know if it's a big majority of people, but like I've seen a few videos of people on Bookstagram being like, I don't like when there's maps in the beginning because it's like I don't want homework before I read. And I'm like, well, it's not homework. Like if you don't want to look at it, it's just there. Like you can skip it very easily. It's there if you need it, basically, is what my thought always was. So I was just always really surprised by that. That kind of thing. And then I've talked with Annie and stuff a lot, and he's a really good guy. But I thought that was the funniest video when he came out. I was like, what? And especially it was so funny because he mentioned Joe Abercrombie, because I was reading those books, and like the whole time I'm reading them, I'm like, I wish there was a map. And I didn't know that he has actually like been on records like saying that he doesn't really care for maps, I guess. I went and found his statement, and it was, I don't think he was like vehemently against maps. I
Yeah.
think he's
No,
slightly,
personal preference kind of,
yeah, personal preference. So I was like, that's so funny because like his book specifically, I was like, these could use a map. I think I would really enjoy having a map for these. Um, and then I found out that he personal preference. And ultimately, obviously, it's all personal preference. Like, it doesn't phase me too much. I just thought it was the funniest thing because it's one of those like, it's one of those blind spots you have where when you love something so much and then you hear the opinion that someone doesn't, you're like, what? I didn't know this opinion could exist. But here we are. Yeah, so it is pretty funny. And again, I think not only like is it obviously it's personal preference, but I think also like it should only just enhance. Like the book does need to function without it. Like it should all the text should be there. If you don't have the map, the book shouldn't be worse for it. Although there are those cases, I guess I was reading like the first Law trilogy, I was like, I'd like one. So it's like one of those funny things, like it enhances it for some people, and it does help out. So
no, I don't get excited about. I guess I'm in the middle,
Okay, the indifferent crowd.
Yeah, but then it kind of makes sense to me that like could it be cool that you're reading along and they mention something, you can flip back and go, oh, that's here and there. You can kind of map their journey, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, because like the arguments I heard against it now, because I was reading the Joe Abercrombie and I was like looking it up, and like I was reading the comments for that article he wrote on his blog, and it's like people either say that distracts them from it, which I guess like if you know the map's there and some place it gets mentioned and you feel the need to go look for it, it like breaks the flow of the work, which I could see that. Because if you know it's there, you're gonna go look, I guess. And then the other one was like it kind of restricts your imagination because like once you have the map, it like really like hones down where you can be, which is a very philosophical thing, I think, in some ways, because you're like, like your imagination knows no bounds about the map. But by the same token, I remember just being a kid, like with all the different fantasy books, like I would just look at the maps, and I think my imagination was just as much like stroked by it, by having like, oh, this country's next to this place, like this city's like really, really close by here. So I always felt like it enhanced the imagination as well by letting you like, get that up, like see where everything is and how everything relates.
Now they just need the Google Street View for these fantasy maps,
That
down.
would be next. I know.
How cool would that be?
That would be cool. I love seeing some of like the interactive maps, like Game of Thrones. It's really useful because you can like, there's one online where you can like overlay like the houses, you can overlay their journeys and stuff. You can do like, if you just hover over it, it'll tell you things. Because I have the map on my website, but I'm not able to do that at this point. That would be
not
cool.
yet.
Not yet. No, I don't have the time where the technical skills to figure out.
You definitely pull some readers, I think, that way.
Yeah, that could. All right. That would
good marketing.
That would help.
Probably have to fork out a lot of money, but
Yeah. Well, exactly. I would try to figure it out myself, I think, but that might be a big headache.
So let's get into your book. What came first, the maps or was it together?
No, the idea for it came first. So I'll just go into the book now, I guess.
Yep,
and then
go for it.
I can talk about a little bit about the map and the process for it. So it's called the Council of Athyzia. And the main idea behind it was, as I mentioned, I like really into history and like I've been trying to write some different historical fiction. And one idea I'd been playing around with was after World War I, there was the Paris Peace Conferences where they did like the Treaty of Versailles and all these different countries came together to kind of just reshape the world after the war. And I kind of saw that would be like a really good like piece for historical fiction. Like there'd be just a lot of drama, there's a lot of tension from that. But I also was at that time like really interested in writing some fantasy. So those two ideas kind of just melded, and I was like, I take this and just put it in the fantasy setting. So once that idea kind of happened, it was like really quick that a lot of ideas came from that, because I was like, well, I will just take kind of the more classic fantasy elements like elves and dwarves and different kingdoms and different types of magic, and like what would if they were coming to a council and being like, we want this issue addressed in this post-world war, what would their issues be? So like the dwarves were easy. I was like, it's a classic trope in fantasy that they've been like chased out of their mountain area. So they come and they're like, we want to return to our mountain homelands that these kingdoms now occupy. So they're trying to get back there. And then like the elves, there's like these discriminatory laws in a lot of the kingdoms towards them. So they're coming and saying like, we want to get rid of these because we were instrumental in fighting in the war. So we think we should be treated as equal. So like once I started coming up with those different issues for them to bring to the council, then I started shaping the world. And pretty quickly after I had the outline, I tried to start making the map, because that also seeing how the different kingdoms were close to where they were next to each other, like what would the tension be, like this kingdom's always antagonizing this one because it's this is the larger one, it has these are like puppet states of this one, basically like that kind of thing. So it's so the map came pretty quickly after that.
Did you just dive into the typical fantasy tropes with the races, or did you create any races of your own, or did you how'd you go about that?
Yeah, no, I definitely drew on kind of the more tropey, I would say more tropey elements of it, which I always was like, that could go either way. Like people can be like, I really like the classical style, and I'm hoping that you're now seeing it like in a newer context, because they're in this like political arena where they are, there's alliances being formed and different factions and everything like that. So in a sense, and I think this is a little bit more like subconsciously, but I wanted to keep them a little bit more familiar, because then it's ideally there's already a lot that you have to gather. Like the reader has to learn a lot about this world for these political conversations to make sense. So I think by having them be a little bit more familiar, that the reader will recognize, hopefully, like, okay, like I've seen dwarves that are similar to these. They're just in a slightly new context, versus like making a completely different race. Would be, I think, just this extra step for the reader to do. So that was kind of the conscious, unconscious decision making behind that.
And you can probably always do what most fantasy authors do and add a race later on. There's a new threat, or an unawakened evil, or whatever.
Exactly. There's centaurs, but they didn't really play a role. They're like just talked about, and then there are orcs that are also talked about as being around. So
cool.
But nothing that I've created for sure.
Cool. Well, I did notice, because I did start reading it yesterday. Big book. And I loved straight away. You started with like a quote, like the philosophy thing, and it just felt historical. Like like this is a world with history, rich in history. So did you sit down and write an actual philosophy of magic, or just random quotes?
Random quotes. There's that one came to me because I was trying to explain my magic system. So like I had that kind of quote, like, and then I honestly was only going to have two, because there's like two sections. And then one suggestion from my editor was to do more, which I was like, okay, which actually wasn't too difficult. Like sometimes there are things that like I had said in other places that I just could use, and it made more sense there. So it is, because not only is it like very history heavy and focused, but there is also just where the council takes place in Athyzia is like just a magical academy with all these libraries. So it's books play a very big role in the book as well. So all those books that are mentioned come up throughout. Like the Philosophies of Magic ends up being one of the mage's like favorite books, and he quotes it kind of frequently. And then you see a lot of them throughout get kind of mentioned and talked about. Then it's just, but again, it's just quotes. I did not write.
You didn't write
a whole new one.
Well, be warned, if you ever go like Stephen King big or something like that, then people might reach out and go, "Can you write that book?" And you'll be like, "Oh no,
Like,
oh no, oh no."
probably not. No, I don't think anyone wants to read that whole book. Like,
No, I reckon you would find there's a very small market that would,
yeah.
you know.
Hmm.
I spoke to
Yeah.
another fantasy author, Dan Lehman,
Yeah.
a few years ago, and he said he basically goes so in depth that when his characters walk into a tavern and they're playing a game, he's made up a game and now he has to make up the whole game. Like,
Right.
so it's functional and feasible, and people can go, "Oh wow, look at you can actually go play that game."
Yeah, that would be,
Um,
yeah. It's a good problem to have if I get
yeah,
there, that people are
yeah.
asking for it.
If
Then
only
I
if
can,
only you had time.
that is it. If I had the time, I could
Yeah,
definitely get into
yeah.
that.
I've because I come up with ideas. I've written my own book as well, but
Yeah, the emo.
the Emu War book. That's just been nominated for another award. I woke up this morning, got an
Nice.
email. Yeah,
That's awesome.
some uh Dan's DANZ Kids Award or something like that. So it's been nominated twice before. I haven't won anything, but um,
Hey, it's nice to be
I've gotten
invited.
a lot of emails from fellow Americans, doing school projects and stuff like that. So
That's awesome. That's
you
so
guys you
cool.
guys love it more than us. But
Yeah,
no, I jot down all my ideas and they keep getting longer and longer. I'm like, I got to finish this one before I can do this one. But now I'm at the point where I'll draft one and then I'll work on the next one and then go back to that first one to revisit it like with fresh eyes kind of
yeah,
thing. So keeps me grounded a little bit, I guess.
yeah. That definitely helps because like it's a different part of your brain that does the
Yeah.
drafting
Yeah.
where the outlining and everything like
Yeah.
that versus editing versus so if you can
Yeah.
have there's some days where you're just like I just don't have it in me to write, but like if
Yeah.
I can just be like let me think about what happens in
Yeah.
book 3,
Yeah.
like at least I'm working on that and
Yeah.
and pushing that one forward.
Yeah.
So I do have ideas past this, but again it's like I need to get
Yeah.
a few more the books when this universe written and then I can get to
Yeah.
those.
Yeah. Yeah. So how you touched on it briefly, but how does your magic system work? Are you just going for the traditional one, or did you tweak it?
Yeah, yeah. So that one of all the things, because I do think I'm very planned out. Like I have the
Yeah.
plot pretty planned out. I always had the
Yeah.
map. Magic system was much more pulled together, like throughout. Like
Yeah.
essentially, it was not conceived beforehand. Um, it is much more of a soft magic system, I would say. It's more for the atmospheric things. Like there are mages. It's that so where the council takes place is called Athyzia, and it's this
Yep.
magical academy. So two people hosting it are two mages, so they can do magic.
Yep.
But because of the aspect of the council, they actually don't do too much magic
Yeah.
in the book. It's just alluded to that they were very instrumental in the war
Yeah.
using magic.
Yeah.
There is a lot of necromancy. So the war was actually fought against a dark lord that's called the Ossiamancer.
Yep.
So he is just basically a form of necromancy that
Yeah.
but bone magic specifically. So he's raising legions of undead. Probably the most unique piece of the magic system is that there's this one faction that basically functions almost as like a religion called the Magic Order. And this was what I guess I did develop during the outline stage because I wanted the magic system that would basically be the antagonistic piece of it. So they end up how they gain their magic is if all the people without magic are following their rules and edicts, they will be fueled by that essentially. So there's what are called the common folk, which is the vast majority of the population are people who just cannot do magic. And this magic of order has basically shown that if they believe in their types of magic and follow the rules that they lay out, their protectors and keepers, that's what they're called, kind of like their mages, they will be more powerful and then they will help protect those common folk. So they're basically saying like, mages have overlooked these common folk for years because they can just do whatever magic they want. We're bringing them into our system and protecting them in turn. And of course, this has become really large in these areas with a lot of common folk because they just had a massive war against a necromancer. So the common folk don't really love magic right now at all. So they're really kind of turning to this very quickly because they see it as like a safety thing, even though it's like fairly strict, and they have rules not only of how the common folk need to live their lives, but also like what types of magic should be practiced. And it becomes like a pretty big part of the council is that they want to basically ban certain types of magic throughout, starting with necromancy, which everyone's kind of like, maybe we should do that. And then there's certain factions or groups that are like, this feels, like the slippery slope kind of thing. Like, we got to be careful. Like, we ban necromancy. Then what's next, essentially?
Wow. So it's like a whole political fantasy world, and that's
and I wanted the magic to be like really integral to that. I wanted them to have like a philosophical reason, not just be antagonists, So
you're taking away my necromancy rights.
Well, there's one group, like when they start bringing up the necromancy, there's one group who's just like kind of, because there's the council sessions where they talk about it openly, like what they want to do. And then there's all these backroom deals. So the protagonist, Navina, she eventually ends up in this back room and someone's like, I can't tell you why, but we want necromancy to continue. And she's like, what? She's like, why do you need it to continue? And then it's just like, that's like a mystery. Like, why does this one kingdom want necromancy to continue?
We want our pets to live forever, It's just
it's worse than that, but so then that's part of it, because then she's like, well, if I would ever want their vote, then I need to vote against that thing, basically.
That's really interesting. So is the whole book just about that council thing, or is there other things happening as well in the outside world, or what's the overall plot?
It's really, it is, the overall plot is the council discussions. It is dialogue heavy, like they're in these sessions. I do think that it introduces a good fair amount of tension, because there are votes coming up, and like, it's like, if you vote for this thing, we'll vote for this thing. Without giving too much away, it does. So like the first half is way more in that council setting, and then a few things happen where certain members are no longer there, and it kind of sets off other elements that they need to kind of like. This council is still going, but there's other things that are happening in the background. It is funny because, like we talked about fantasy maps, the whole book does take place in Athyzia, so it takes place in one place, even though I have the map of the entire continent.
Well, you kind of need to know where people came from, like they traveled this far to, and sorry, Annie.
Yes.
See, that makes more sense, like to have a map, because you've got all these different nations, and
it helps you keep track of them too, because there are, you need to know like these guys are next to them and things like that. So
and it's easier to have that reference point than saying they're from the north, they're from the northeast, they're from the west, they're from the
it breaks down. It's like they're neighbors with them on this side, on the western border.
So and these guys are snug between them both. It's just
it definitely helps.
I think you've won me over for maps now. I'm pro map.
Nice. I'm glad I could come on.
I think from memory, because the first book I ever read in its entirety was Jurassic Park, and I'm pretty sure there was a map in the start of that one.
Is there? That's pretty cool.
I think so. Like I would have been 11 or 12 when I read that.
Okay.
Because my parents were like,
that book is really awesome.
My parents were like, I don't care what it is, you need to read.
Like dinosaur.
And I was just like, I think I just watched the movie, and I was just like, and I got through that book so quickly because I had the visuals of the movie in my head while I, read along to it, and then I smashed out the second one straight away. And I remember going like, these movies are good, but the books have more,
more. The books are sneaky better in that. Like it's close on that one, but
it's more graphic, because I think Steven Spielberg said he wanted to make it a little more family friendly, because the books are just like, wow,
like, because he doesn't care. He's writing for adults completely.
Yeah.
Right.
And he's just like, let me describe what happened to Dennis Nedry in that car in great detail. I'm just like, wow,
Yeah, no, and as 11-year-old, you're like
yeah, yeah,
loving it,
yeah.
probably.
I can't remember. No,
Yeah.
but
But he explains the concepts pretty well. I remember reading it like
yeah,
sometime after the movie.
yeah,
Because you like I think as when you're watching it, the movie, you're
yeah,
hooked. But
yeah,
I think some of the concepts and like how it happens kind of goes
yeah,
even with the video with the Amber and the
yeah,
dancing people.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
the
yeah.
book help.
That's cool. Yeah, and then I realized that not too long ago that Michael Crichton did Westworld.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm going like
Kind
this
of
sound. It's like Jurassic Park with cowboys. But I think he did that one
true.
first. So
True.
I'm just going like I'm
Yeah.
sensing a theme here.
Yeah. He has a time machine one too.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
because the book that I've got, which is falling apart, it's two books. It's Jurassic Park and Congo or something. He did a book called Congo. I haven't read it, but
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
there,
I
but
think
I don't know what it is, but
yeah, he has a quite a large
yeah.
backlog.
Yeah,
So
because I went into, I may even mention this on the last podcast, but I went into a secondhand bookstore down on the
yeah.
south coast of New South Wales, and it was floor to ceiling, just books, everything. It had the section with the classic sections with George Orwell and C.S. Lewis and Tolkien and all the classic, every classic book you can think of, they had it there, and
That's pretty impressive.
had all this Michael Crichton stuff. I'm going like, geez, I can't afford this, you know.
So you got one of, is that the one you got, or
I
did you?
no, I got I didn't want to overload myself, but I got War of the Worlds, which I'm reading at the moment for the first time. Um, uh, the Jules Verne under 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, I think it is. I got that one. I got 1984 by Orwell. Um, they had The Art of War. That
Oh yeah,
yeah.
that's
So
just a good one.
I'm going. You know what? I'm going to go back and read the classics.
That is
I'm gonna go
definitely the
back and read the
classics.
classics.
That one. Yeah.
Yeah. So slowly go through them. Is I get a 45-minute break at work, so I have lunch and read a book.
Every time I see a quote from Art of War, you're always like, I'm like, I should read the whole thing because I'm sure there's so many
Yeah.
little nuggets that are
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
because you'll see a quote every now and then, and you're just like, oh yeah, because it's just a quote. They're all just
Yeah.
quotes.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. And you can't be the guy that just quotes things on the internet and you go, have you actually read that whole thing? No.
Right. Yeah. You can
No,
call
I
that.
just like quoting it. Just
Yeah.
like quoting it.
Quoting the quotes I've seen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Little me.
Yeah. It's like everybody does that,
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
like I've seen people like completely misinterpret 1984, not to get too political.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's certain political factions that are like, oh, this is becoming like 19. You're like, you didn't read the book.
Have you read the book?
Yeah. Have you read the book? Yeah.
Yeah, because it's taking things out of context and taking, quotes. It's like he could even said like within it he could have been quoting someone else, and then they go, oh, he didn't say that. He said someone else said that.
Yeah. Just complete. Yeah. You can be
do anything.
pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because well, that got deep.
That's fine.
Where were we?
Uh,
are you writing any more books following
yes.
after this?
Yeah. So originally I did want this to be a standalone.
Yeah.
Like I just had the original concept of the council like in a fantasy world. And I got to the end, and with beta reader and editors' feedback, it was like maybe people kind of wanted more, I could sense.
Yeah.
And then I started thinking about it, like what would actually happen after, with how it ended. And I did start getting some more ideas. So once I started getting enough that it like started crystallizing into something, it became a trilogy. So now I am the second book is written. I'm just in the middle of doing edits for it. So I'm about halfway through that. And I've also written a shorter prequel as well.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping to get that out. And then I would have to write the third book. That's only like slight outline form, like the slimmest of an outline.
Yeah.
It's there. So yeah. So
you got plenty of time to figure that out.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm hoping I'm like, get through book 3, And then like I do like to give myself time in between, like, finish this draft,
Yeah.
give myself time before I do the proofreading. So maybe I'll do like
Yeah.
a really strong outline of book 3. Which it's nice to have that luxury, because then like if you want something to happen in book 3, you can kind of go back to book 2 and like make it look like you knew it was going to happen the whole time.
Yes. Yeah. Instead of, not planning it out. Like, who is it? There's a Eric Kripke who did Supernatural, the TV show
Okay, yeah.
Supernatural. Yeah. I'm a fan of the first 5 seasons, and that's it.
Right. Yeah,
But
there's a few shows like that.
because he wrote 5 seasons and slotted everything. This is a twist. This is everything that's going to happen, and you can go back and you can see characters acting a certain way from 3 seasons before the twist. It's not suddenly there,
It's so awesome when you get something like that.
And
like
it's
the
just
rewatchability.
Yeah, and it's just
It's
like
so good.
you sat down, you had a plot, you had like leading up to like a supervillain,
Yeah.
and then ta-da, the resolve, which was amazing, and then they're like, let's do 10 more seasons. And you're going like, no,
Did they? Yeah. Yeah.
You're just like, and it was
That's like
bad.
we only started rewatching it. Have you ever watched Prison Break?
Yes.
Yeah. Because that one is like every time you tell someone about that show, they're like, well, what happens when they break out? And you're like, well, yeah, falls apart pretty quick.
Yeah.
Although, so like, because that one, the first season is amazing.
Oh
And
yeah,
then,
phenomenal. Yeah.
and then I actually think the second season is pretty good because they're on the run.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's like they probably should have wrapped it up, I think.
Yeah.
Well,
And
you
it should
they
have.
were gonna run off.
Yeah. But it's when you have money, when they throw money at you, you're like, because I could tell that they had season 1 on a wrap. They knew everything they were going to do, and then they'll probably be going season 2, and they're like, what?
Right? Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
So I felt like the first few episodes of season 2, you could tell they're trying to figure out what they're going to do.
That makes sense.
And then they kind of just pieced itself back together, and then they go, what more? And they're like, I think season 4. Season 4, I'm like, can this even be called Prison Break? Because they're working for whoever, It's just like, what is it? It's got nothing to do with,
Yeah, you guys, fortunately, I wish I had planned it out as 3 books, because that's the issue, but I feel okay with how it happened.
Yeah.
Because I mean, being indie, you're just like, if I'm done, I'm done. I don't have that problem throwing a ton of money at me.
Yeah. But at the same time, you've got the kind of the idea for the third one. The second one isn't even out yet, so you still have that time frame to tweak things and change things, and so technically I think that counts. It's not
okay, if that counts, that feels
because
good.
it's not like release. Oh, okay, how do I
that would it would stress me out to release it without knowing where 3 is gonna end.
Now, are you gonna finish on 3, or are you gonna continue, or are you gonna wait and see if an idea comes?
If an idea comes, like the universe, or like whatever, the world that's in, I do love it, because like I love that classic fantasy. If I ever want to do another story that's just like adjacent and not the same characters, like that could just be the sandbox for that. If I want to use like wizards and witches and elves, like I'll just go back to that. But I do think someone has asked me, like, well, because obviously it takes place after this war has happened. So there is all this, like, there's all these references to events throughout that war, but like I don't have like a story for it. But people have asked if I'd write books during the war. And I just don't know, because it's just, that feels very, very dark. You're fighting reanimated skeletons, and unless I had like a unique narrative, I don't know if I would do that. But if something pops in, comes up to me. There is the prequel I wrote takes place before the war starts, so I'm kind of like straddling it now,
avoiding war.
Yeah.
So look, I'm sometimes things you need to be left to mystery, left to the imagination kind of thing, because like bringing it back to the movies, when Hugh Jackman made an Origins Wolverine movie, I felt
Right.
that kind of took away from the whole
Yeah,
mystery side of it. You know,
I
we
agree.
all agree that was a bad movie. It was a horrible movie.
Yeah.
But then if we didn't have that, then we wouldn't have gotten Deadpool and we wouldn't have gotten Logan and
Yeah.
stuff like that. You know, but yeah, it's just I love mystery. I love having a little bit unanswered questions because it
Yeah.
keeps you wondering. You know.
It's like the midi-chlorians in Star Wars.
Yeah.
Like you don't need to explain this,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like people, piecing it together on their own, I like a lot. Like,
Yeah.
because there's key events that happened during the war that I just dropped little clues about throughout, which
Yeah.
I really enjoy doing. And then ideally the reader can kind of just connect different conversations and figure out what happened. Which is, I think, hopefully enjoyable.
Yeah.
For them.
No, mystery. I love a good mystery. You know, I love questions that are unanswered. I know a lot of people don't. I mean, there's a level where you can do it at. Like, you know, like there's like not like the Sopranos ending, you know, you're just like you know, but like
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, you need to set, but yeah, you can leave. There's certain things you can leave unanswered and certain things you can't, obviously.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
Yeah, like the end of Batman, what was it? The Christian Bale Batman, the last one, Dark Knight Rises, you know, it's like you wonder at the end there, you know, you wonder.
Well, yeah, I guess the other one's Inception with
Yeah. And the director did say like it's up to you.
Yeah,
you know,
it's
it's just
good.
like
I
you
like
don't
that.
know,
I like
you
a
know?
little bit ambiguous, but yeah,
Yeah.
you still need to know he got off the plane and everything like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Good. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Tell us where we can buy your books, where we can follow you, where we can, you know, stalk you on the internet.
Yeah, definitely. So my biggest account or the biggest social that I'm using is Instagram. I just have not been able to try to figure out TikTok. But that Instagram is D_H_Hoskins. And then my website is just dhhoskins.com. And then it's available Amazon, and then Kindle and Kindle Unlimited. And then also some smaller independent bookstores. So like Salient Books is online independent bookstore, and then there's a few other local ones near me. But yeah, I think most of where you'll find out new information is Instagram.
Yeah, cool. Sweet, guys. All that information will be in the show notes. And remember to check out our sponsors, Rebecca Cassells and Martin Kearns. Their links in the show notes too. Martin Kearns will be on soon again, talking about his new book. But if you want to reach out, thetrueandthefictional@gmail.com, stories_podcast on Instagram. All our socials are down in the show notes too. And D.H Hoskins, thank you for coming on again.
Thank you. This is great. I really appreciate it.
We'll catch you guys next time.
In 1932, the Australian Army declared war on 20,000 emus and lost. It's a part of Australian history that not many know about. Maybe that's because history is written by those who win. So if you want to hear the full story of the Great Emu War of 1932, then check out my book, Letters from the Emu War. Read letters, newspaper articles, and journal entries. With every turn of the page, you will gain a deeper understanding of the life and times of emus at war. So head on over to jabryden.com and grab a signed copy today.